Hi and welcome to another card making video. Today I'm happy to join a blog hub for the latest release by Altenew, and I have picked a couple of favorites which are perfect for summer cards. So the first one is the Summer Wishes, and you will find matching dies as well as matching stencils, so you can get spoiled. Instead of coloring with Copics, you can go ahead and ink blend everything. And this is another adorable one which is called Mod Fruit Bowl. It allows you to create all kinds of fruits for a very modern and fresh looking card. And let's have some fun creating the first card for today. This is the leaflet that you get along with the stamp set with lots of ideas on what you can do with it. I'm going to work with the main big stamp, but you see the way the stamp is, it kind of moves around, and I'm not sure if I will be able to align it correctly so that the die is going to fit perfectly on top. That's why I'm going to do the die cutting first, and that's a little trick that we usually do when the stamp is quite wobbly. So now I have the negative. I'm going to align my stamp inside and it fits perfectly there. I'm going to close the door of my MISTI. And then I can place the actual die cut inside the negative space. And now I can go ahead and do the stamping. For that I used black permanent ink by Altenew. I am going to do it a second time just because I didn't press quite enough at the center. And of course you can go ahead and use your alcohol markers, your watercolors, your pencils, whatever you like. Instead, I'm going with a stencil just because I find it super easy and I just love blending inks. So just to make my life easy so that I have enough meat as I'm working with the stencils, I am going to secure the positive inside the negative of this cardstock just by using some masking tape at the back. So for coloring the umbrella, I'm going with fuchsia for the two parts of the umbrella. For that I'm using one of the blending tools by Altenew. Any blending tools that you have would do the trick here. I'm not doing any crazy shading, I just apply color through the stencil. Then I'm going to switch into a darker color, and the darker color that I'm using here comes from the same set of Altenew dies. And this is magenta, and I'm just brushing out a little bit of that darker color at the bottom of those areas. Before you remove the stencil, it is a good idea to clean it up now. I will just use a piece of paper towel, and I love that when you work with dye inks, they do not stain your stencils or your stamps. So now I move the stencil on another area, and this time I'm working with baby pink. Again, I'm going to follow the same technique. I'm going to apply lightly my color all over the area, and then just to add a touch of a darker shade, I'm not going to switch to another ink pad. I'm going to use the same one, just apply a little bit more color at the base of this area, just to help it look more dimensional and not look as flat. And I continue in the same manner. For the chair, I went with yellows and oranges. If you want to know the exact colors that I used, the lighter one is chamomile, while the darker shade is snapdragon. And just like always, you will find links to everything I used linked down below in the description. For the hat, I went with a bright green, and this is Parrot, and I kept the ribbon white as well as the stick of the umbrella, but I touched it a little bit with a light grey alcohol marker so that I can add a touch of shadow. And now my focal point is ready. Let's work on the background. For the background I have two pieces of cardstock, the exact same size, a blue and a craft colored one. I teared off the bottom, and you can see that it looks as if we have the sea on top of the sand. Now for the bottom of this edge I'm going to do a little bit of embossing, so I'm going over it with my embossing ink pad there. I really randomly just swipe the ink pad there, and then I will apply white embossing powder. If you do have chunky embossing powder, it would work even better for the foam of the sea. And you can definitely repeat this process a couple of times if you want to get a good coverage. I'm really happy with how it looks, so I'm going to stick one on top of the other. And if you do have cardstock that has white core, when you tear the bottom of one piece, you may end up with a white edge, so you probably don't need to do that trick with the embossing powder that I did here. However, I find it is a great technique for sea and sand. So now let's finish it off by adding a frame. I'm just going to cut out a white frame. And before sticking the frame on top of my background, I decided to add a little bit of splatter on the sand just to make it look more realistic. So just swiped my brown ink pad on my glass mat, a little bit of water to dilute it, and with a thin brush I'm adding my splatters. These are not going to be as visible as they are at the moment. They're going to dry and look more subtle at the finished card. You can also do that on top of your sand with gold watercolor, and it would give a beautiful effect as well. So now I'm working at the back of my frame and I'm using very thin foam strips so that I can stick the frame on top of my background and have some dimension. And finally, let's put the card together. You can place it on an angle as I'm going to do it today, or you can place it straight and aligned with your card base. The card base, by the way, is A2 standard card, that's 4¼ by 5½. So here you see me play around trying to decide where I want everything to go. Once I'm happy, I will commit and stick everything down. For the main background, I'm going with glue at the back, so this is going to lay flat. But I do have dimension since my frame is stuck down by using foam tape. And then for the chair and the umbrella, I'm using foam tape so that it is leveled with the frame. By the way, this is definitely one of my favorite frames. You have seen me using it again and again since I got it, and I know I will be using it a lot in the future as well. And finally, I just stamped my sentiment that says "Have a great summer," which again comes from the same stamp set. And let's create one more card. This time I'm doing some blending for my background. I'm starting with green, and this is Parrot, a light and bright green. And I'm inking up almost up at the middle of my panel. I'm using the big blending brush by Altenew, which makes sure that you end up with a very smooth blending, and I'm barely touching the paper. So this way I end up with a very smooth transition from green to white, as you can see. Now I did add a little bit more green at the base, and now I will repeat the same technique on the other side of my panel, but this time I'm going to use red. This is Heartbeat dye ink. Again, I'm using my blending brush, barely touching the paper again and again, and adding a little bit more ink only at the very edge. The idea is to end up with a background that reminds you of a watermelon. I didn't speed up the process of inking this background so you can see how long it takes, and I hope that you can tell from the video that I'm not pressing the blending tool at all. I'm just sliding it over the paper, and that's how I got this smooth blending. Remember, no pressure at all, and load your brush again and again. Don't go with too much ink from the beginning. So here I'm just going to stamp a watermelon. For that I'm using one of the solid semicircles. And this stamp set gives you many different shapes that you can mix and match for creating many different fruits. So just remember that if you are working with a solid stamp like this one, always prep it before you stamp it for the first time. So here I'm just using an eraser. And you will see that with the first time that I'm stamping, I will get the perfect impression, no need to do it a second time. By the way, the color I used here is the same color that I used for the background, so this is Heartbeat. Then there is a little stamp that can give you seeds for your watermelon. I'm going to stamp those with black ink, of course. And then finally for the green part, I am using again the same ink, Parrot, that I used for the background, so everything matches perfectly. I'm going to use the matching die to cut out my watermelon, and this is going to be my focal point. The card is clean and simple in style, so I'm using foam tape at the back. I'm going to stick it on top. And then of course I need to add a sentiment. For that I'm going with one of the sentiments from the same stamp set, and I'm just going to stamp it underneath my watermelon with black. Then to finish off this card, I just place this panel on top of a standard card that's 4 1/4 by 5 1/2, and here is the finished look. So these were the cards for today. I hope that you had fun and that you got inspired. Don't forget, this is part of a blog hop. Make sure to visit my blog, there are lots of giveaways to be won, and if you join the blog hop you will find tons of inspiration and see all the new products in action. Thank you all so much for joining me today, and I hope you'll all have a lovely weekend.